People say a single moment can change a life forever. What they don't tell you is that sometimes it only takes one cruel kick, one crowded gas station, and one girl who couldn't run away. If this story already has your heart pounding, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel right now, because what you're about to hear will stay with you long after it ends. It was a late afternoon at a dusty roadside gas station just outside a small town where everyone pretended to know everyone else. The kind of place where the sun hit the concrete so hard it felt like the ground itself was burning. Emma sat near the curb beside the air pump, her wheelchair angled slightly toward the shade that barely existed under the station's faded roof. She was 17, thin as a whisper, her left leg stiff and weak from an accident years ago that had taken more than her ability to walk. It had taken her confidence, her sense of safety, and her belief that strangers could be kind. She was waiting for her uncle, who had gone inside to pay for gas, counting the seconds the way she always did when she was alone in public, telling herself to stay calm, to stay invisible. That's when the laughter started, loud, sharp, and mean. A group of 3 teenagers leaned against a black pickup truck nearby, their clothes clean, their smiles dirty with arrogance. One of them, tall and broad-shouldered with restless eyes, kept staring at Emma like she was something out of place, something that didn't belong. "Hey," he called out, his voice dripping with mockery. "What's wrong with you?" Emma pretended not to hear, fixing her gaze on a crack in the concrete, but the laughter only grew. The boy stepped closer, his boots heavy, deliberate. "Can you even stand up?" he sneered, circling her wheelchair as if she were an exhibit. Emma's hands trembled on the wheels. She wanted to scream, to roll away, but fear locked her in place. The other boys egged him on, phones out, hungry for a video that would get them attention at someone else's expense. Then it happened, fast, cruel, unforgettable. The bully lifted his foot and kicked the side of her wheelchair, hard enough to jolt her body sideways. Emma cried out as pain shot through her weak leg, her head snapping forward as she nearly fell. The sound echoed across the station, louder than the engines, louder than the music playing from inside. For a split second, everything went silent. Emma's eyes filled with tears, not just from the pain but from the humiliation, from the feeling that she was small and alone in a world that could be so vicious. No one moved, no one spoke. The bully laughed, a short, ugly sound, clearly pleased with himself. "Relax," he said, holding up his hands like it was a joke. "It's just a prank." But Emma knew better. Her heart hammered as she struggled to straighten herself, her breath coming in shaky gasps. That's when she heard it, not laughter, not voices, but a low, distant rumble. At first, she thought it was thunder. Then the ground began to vibrate, a deep, rolling sound growing louder by the second. Heads turned. The bully frowned, glancing toward the highway. The rumble became a roar, unmistakable now, powerful enough to make the air itself feel heavy. One by one, motorcycles appeared at the edge of the road. Then 5, then 10, then more than Emma could count. Chrome flashed in the sunlight, engines growling like something alive. 40 bikers rode in formation, leather jackets, hardened faces, slowing as they pulled into the gas station. The laughter died instantly. The bully's face drained of color, his confident grin melting into pure fear as the bikes surrounded the lot, cutting off every exit. Emma looked up, stunned, tears still on her cheeks, as the lead biker cut his engine and removed his helmet. His eyes went straight to her, kind, furious, and protective all at once. And in that moment, Emma realized she was no longer invisible, and the boy who kicked her was about to learn a lesson he would never forget. The gas station felt smaller now, like the walls were closing in under the weight of 40 roaring engines that had suddenly gone silent. The quiet was worse than the noise. It pressed against everyone's ears as the bikers dismounted one by one, boots hitting the concrete with slow, deliberate thuds. They moved with purpose, not rushed, not aggressive, just controlled like men and women who had learned long ago that true power didn't need to shout. The bully swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing as his eyes darted from face to face. Up close, he didn't look so tough anymore. His shoulders slumped, his hands shaking as he shoved them into his pockets. suddenly very aware that the phones filming moments ago were now pointed down, hidden in shame. The lead biker stepped forward, tall, grey streaks in his beard. Leather vest worn thin by years on the road. A small patch on his chest read Iron Brotherhood. He didn't raise his voice when he spoke, but every word landed like a hammer. "Who did that?" he asked, nodding toward Emma's tilted wheelchair. No one answered. The air smelled of gasoline and fear. Emma felt her chest tighten as all eyes turned to her. She wasn't used to being seen like this. Not as a joke, not as a problem, but as someone worth protecting. She tried to speak, but her throat burned. The words stuck behind the lump of emotion she'd been holding back for years. One of the bikers, a woman with braided hair and soft eyes, knelt beside her, ignoring everyone else. "Hey, sweetheart," she said gently. "Are you hurt?" That was all it took. Emma nodded, tears spilling freely now, the pain in her leg pulsing with every heartbeat. The woman placed a steady hand on the armrest of the wheelchair, grounding her. "You're safe now," she whispered. Behind them, the lead biker slowly turned, his gaze locking onto the bully. "You," he said, pointing with one thick finger. "Step forward." The boy hesitated, then took a shaky step. Another biker blocked his friends from moving, crossing his arms like a living wall. "What did you think you were doing?" the leader asked. The bully stammered, his bravado completely gone. It was just a joke. We were messing around." The biker's eyes narrowed. "Funny how jokes only seem funny when someone else is hurting," he replied. He gestured toward Emma. "You ever tried living a day in her body?" The bully shook his head, staring at the ground. Around them, people had started to gather, drivers, the cashier from inside, even a trucker who had parked nearby. No one interrupted. They didn't need to. The biker's presence commanded attention without a single threat. The leader took a slow breath. "We ride together," he said, voice steady. "We protect our own. And today, she's one of us." A murmur rippled through the group as several bikers nodded in agreement. Emma's eyes widened. No one had ever said something like that about her before. The bully finally looked up, his eyes wet, his voice barely audible. "I'm sorry," he muttered. The leader studied him for a long moment, then spoke again. "Sorry isn't for us. It's for her. And it doesn't erase what you did." He stepped aside, giving the woman biker space as she gently checked Emma's leg, asking where it hurt, reassuring her with every touch. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Someone had called the police. The bully flinched at the sound. The leader nodded once, satisfied. "Good," he said quietly. "Let the law handle the rest." Emma watched as the boy's knees nearly buckled, the weight of consequences finally sinking in. For the first time since the accident that had changed her life, she felt something unfamiliar bloom in her chest. Not fear, not shame, but strength. Surrounded by strangers who had chosen to stand up for her, Emma realized that kindness could be louder than cruelty, and that even in the most unexpected places, heroes could arrive on two wheels, right when you needed them most. The police cars arrived with flashing lights that painted the gas station in harsh reds and blues, but somehow the tension didn't spike. It settled, heavy and final, like the last note of a song you know is ending. The bullies stood frozen as officers stepped out, their hands resting near their belts, eyes quickly assessing the unusual scene. 40 bikers forming a loose protective circle, a shaken girl in a wheelchair at the center, and a crowd of silent witnesses who suddenly found their voices when authority appeared. Emma watched everything from her seat, her emotions tangled and overwhelming. Her uncle burst out of the convenience store at the sound of sirens, panic written all over his face until he saw her. He rushed to her side, dropping to his knees, checking her face, her hands, her leg, his voice breaking as he asked if she was okay. Emma tried to answer, but the words dissolved into tears. One of the officers knelt too, speaking calmly, asking what happened. For the first time in her life, Emma didn't look away. She told them everything, the mocking, the circling, the kick. Her voice trembled, but it didn't stop. Each word felt like reclaiming a piece of herself that had been stolen long ago. The witnesses backed her up, even the cashier, who admitted he'd seen the boys harassing her earlier, but hadn't stepped in. Shame flickered across several faces in the crowd. The bully's friends tried to slip away, but an officer stopped them with a firm command. Phones were collected, videos reviewed. There was no denying it now. As the bully was placed in handcuffs, his tough guy mask shattered completely. He cried openly, begging, apologizing again and again. Not just to Emma, but to anyone who would listen. Emma watched him, surprised by how little satisfaction she felt. What she felt instead was tired and strangely light, like she'd been holding her breath for years and had finally exhaled. The lead biker approached her uncle, explaining calmly why they were there. "We ride these highways a lot," he said. "We look out for people who can't always look out for themselves." Emma's uncle shook his hand with both of his eyes wet as he thanked him over and over. The woman biker returned with a bottle of water, helping Emma take small sips, staying close even as the police finished their work. When the bully was led away, the crowd slowly dispersed, but the bikers stayed. They didn't rush off. They stood around like sentinels, making sure Emma was okay, making sure the moment wasn't just dramatic, but meaningful. An ambulance arrived to check Emma's leg. Thankfully, nothing was broken, but the pain was real, and the emotional shock even more so. As paramedics worked, the lead biker crouched down so he was eye level with her. "You were brave today," he said simply. Emma shook her head. "I was scared," she whispered. He smiled gently. "Brave doesn't mean not scared. It means you spoke anyway." Those words lodged deep in her heart. Before they left, the bikers did something unexpected. One by one, they walked up to Emma and introduced themselves, names, stories, jokes, encouragement. Some told her about their own injuries, their own losses, how the road had taught them family wasn't always blood. Someone draped a small Iron Brotherhood patch over the back of her wheelchair, not official, not earned by riding, but given as a symbol. "You're part of the family now," the woman biker said with a wink. Emma laughed through her tears, a real laugh, the kind she hadn't felt in years. As the engines finally started again, the sound wasn't frightening anymore. It was comforting, like a promise. They rode out together, leaving behind skid marks, stunned silence, and a gas station that would never forget what happened there. That night, Emma lay in bed replaying everything in her mind. The kick, the fear, the roar of engines, the kindness of strangers. Something inside her had shifted. She still had a disability. She still had pain, but she no longer felt weak. The next day at school, the videos had spread, not the ones mocking her, but the ones showing the bikers arriving, showing her speaking to police, showing the bully in handcuffs. Comments poured in, support, apologies, anger at what had been done to her. Teachers pulled her aside to ask if she was okay. Students who had never spoken to her before smiled, waved, offered to help. It wasn't perfect, and it didn't erase the past, but it mattered. Weeks later, Emma received a letter. Inside was a photo of the Iron Brotherhood lined up on their bikes, and a short note: "Never forget. You're stronger than you think. If you ever need us, we're just a road away." Emma held that photo to her chest, tears slipping down her cheeks, but this time they were warm, healing tears. The world was still cruel sometimes. People could still be bullies. But Emma had learned something powerful, that even in the darkest moments, when you feel small and alone, goodness can arrive louder than hate, and when it does, it can change you forever. Months passed, but the gas station incident didn't fade, it transformed. What began as pain slowly turned into purpose, and Emma felt it every morning when she woke up a little straighter, a little braver. The bruise on her leg healed, but the memory stayed, no longer sharp like a wound, but solid like armor. At school, things were different now. Not magically perfect, but different enough to matter. People didn't whisper as much. Some avoided her out of guilt. Others approached her with awkward kindness. But Emma no longer shrank from attention. She had found her voice, and once found, it refused to disappear. One afternoon, her principal asked her to speak at an assembly about bullying. The old Emma would have panicked, searched for an excuse, stayed silent. This time, she said yes. When she rolled onto that stage, the room fell quiet. She told her story, not just about the kick, but about the years of being ignored, mocked, treated like she was less. She talked about fear, about how silence protects bullies, and about the moment 40 motorcycles reminded her that strangers can choose kindness. When she finished, the applause wasn't polite. It was thunderous. Some students cried. Some teachers wiped their eyes. Emma realized then that her pain had become a bridge for others. News of the speech spread online, and soon messages poured in from people she'd never met. Parents, teens, even veterans, thanking her for speaking up. One message stood out. It was from the Iron Brotherhood. They'd seen the video. They were proud. Weeks later, they invited Emma and her uncle to a charity ride they hosted every year for children with disabilities. When Emma arrived, she saw hundreds of bikes lined up, engines gleaming, riders smiling as if she were already family. They gave her a custom helmet, not for riding but as a symbol, and stitched her name onto a vest patch, honorary rider. Emma cried openly, unashamed. For the first time, she didn't feel like someone people pitied. She felt respected. The bully, meanwhile, faced real consequences. Community service, mandatory counseling, and a juvenile record that followed him like a shadow. Emma heard later that he tried to apologize again through a letter. She read it slowly. It didn't erase the past, but she forgave him, not for his sake but for her own peace. Forgiveness, she learned, wasn't weakness. It was freedom. On the anniversary of the incident, Emma returned to that same gas station. She sat quietly for a moment, watching cars come and go, feeling the sun on her face. Then she smiled. That place no longer held fear. It held proof. Proof that even the smallest person can spark the biggest change, that cruelty can be confronted, and that community can rise from nowhere when it matters most. And to everyone watching this story right now, remember this: you never know who's watching your actions, who's hurting in silence, or who might need you to stand up. If this story moved you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel, because stories like Emma's deserve to be heard, shared, and remembered. One act of courage can echo forever, and you might be someone else's biker arriving right on time.